Hi everybody, Daniel here from Basement Tech. Well, I guess apologies for not putting out too many videos lately, but a lot of life events have kind of kept me a little bit distracted. As some of you might have figured out, I was living over in the UK for the last 6 months with a work assignment, but I'm back now. Um, you may also notice that this isn't the basement. This is Nate's shop, the Zim Knives shop, and I've been working on the machine behind us since I got back. Let me flip around. I'll give you a little tour of what I've been up to with that and some of the hopes that I have for that machine, both just fun for me and maybe some ideas for Zim Knives. All right, well, this is that machine. It's a 3-axis CNC designed for carving wood. Sadly, I acquired it from a friend of mine who passed away recently, but I'm hoping to rebuild it into a state that he would be proud of and continue his legacy. I'm not going to do a very detailed video about how this is built. You can find lots of those on YouTube and on the web, and they're frankly way better than I could do them. I've rebuilt a few parts of this and eliminated some prototype wiring that we all leave in an effort to get started. But let me just give you the quick tour of some of the main components. People familiar with CNC will know these components and have already recognized the user interface here. It's Mach 3. Same as what you might remember from some of our very early videos on the 3-axis metal cutting mill that we built. It runs on a low-end PC. It doesn't require anything special. We are using a board called the Smooth Stepper, the Ethernet Smooth Stepper. In some of the early systems like this, the pulses for the stepper motors are actually generated by the parallel port on some of these old computers. I don't like that idea of mixing, a non-real-time operating system, especially Windows, with an expectation of real-time performance, so enter the Smooth Stepper. So there is an Ethernet, a dedicated Ethernet hardwire that runs over to this, which is the control box. So that Ethernet Smooth Stepper is inside this, which is the control box. It was built by the person from whom I acquired the system. I added a few things. As I say, I cleaned up a little bit of the prototype wiring and added that little bit of a heat sink. That number on the front is the temperature of the controller, which is a Leadshine MX4660. Honestly, I'm not a really big fan. Lots of bad press on the web. It's working, and I'm happy with that. One thing I did have to add was a Whopper capacitor. This controller is not very tolerant of e-stops while the axes are in motion, and that capacitor is said to help that situation. It actually toasts the controller on a regular basis, according to a lot of what's on the web. These are sort of rack and pinion drives, if you will. Those motors, there's one on each side of the long axis, which is the y-axis. They're driven in parallel from separate channels of the controller. And then the x-axis moves back and forth. It's capable, the x-axis, given all that metal and the rigidity, is capable of some really rapid motion. The z-axis, you can't see much in the mechanics. It's well contained for dust, but it's a ball screw, which is really high-end, driven on some parallel raceways with linear bearings. There's a lot to this machine. I didn't get to the spindle yet, but I don't remember the exact number, but it's in the range of 2.5 kilowatts. So it's quite a powerful little motor, and given its size, it's actually water cooled. That's not for the cutter, that's for the sleeve of this motor. And I'll come around back and show you that in just a minute. Again, those familiar with this kind of machine will recognize this Chinese controller. I kind of rewired it again and mounted it here on the wall. Currently it's set up for manual control, but I'm going to add PC control for both speed and on and off. with the RS485 controller. Mach 3 has plugins for that, which is just awesome. You probably also noticed this wireless pendant. I think it's Bluetooth, but it works really well. There's a little USB dongle in the back of the computer. And the other thing I wanted to highlight, notice these aren't limit switches. They're inductive proximity sensors that work really well as homing switches and limit switches, and those are on both ends there. Now back to the back end, I'll just zoom up here, and it's nothing too remarkable. Again, you see that motor near the bottom is the one that drives X back and forth on a rack and pinion as well. Up on top is the Z motor that drives that ball screw. Dust collection is a really big deal when you're carving wood at this rate of speed. This is a very modest dust collection, and I do intend to improve that in the not so distant future with maybe a serious dust collector. Lots of wires and hoses. You see those two hoses? I did put a little antifreeze in the water. Currently, I'm just counting on, the heat sink of the floor being cool, and this bucket radiating heat. I don't actually have a radiator. I'm going to just monitor that and see what I need to do. And then the other black wire that's sheathed in yellow and then black, that's the motor drive with the ground wire. And finally that dust collector goes down into a dust deputy. Again, very modest, driven by a shop vac. So almost all of these components were what the original owner had in his system, and I just managed to clean it up and had to build this stand after transporting it. That top carriage is very heavy, in case you haven't noticed how much metal is there. A couple 100 pounds probably, which gives it awesome rigidity. And given the width of the bed and the depth of the table, we can do about a 2 by 4 foot sign. Z has about a 5-inch depth, so I can cut some pretty deep signs in that kind of thing. Okay, just doing a little air cutting, if you will. Make sure things make sense here. This is the first actual run of some G-code on the machine. Again, those of you who are familiar with Mach 3 will recognize this as the horizontal pocket wizard. I'll come back when I'm actually cutting some of this MDF. It'll be a lot noisier with the dust collection, but hopefully it will work. That's a 1/4 inch